Lost media, what a funny concept. Take a piece of content that was created and then hide it away to the point where the general public cannot access it. Something along those lines. And I gotta say, it's been quite a while since we've talked about normal, typical pieces of lost media like I had been. That's for a few different reasons, mostly in that my interests are changing and the community is not what it used to be. But I did say I would touch upon lost content every now and then, and today I feel like doing that. Mostly because, while me and my friends' ending felt like a clean break from the chains of commitment and toxicity, watching Blame It on Jorge's documentary about the search made me rediscover something I didn't even know I lost: the interest I had in researching topics. Lost media to me was never just about reporting on new searches or being someone who brought attention to stuff. It was about wanting to find what I was interested in. I think over the years as the community grew, that line blurred, but I want to go back to some unfinished business and talk about some searches I do still care about and want to see completed. But I don't just want to talk about them at face value, because they're topics I've covered before. And instead, I'd like to discuss where the searches stand and how each one acts as an example of how searches are getting more difficult to conduct, and how the community has changed as a result of that. It'll probably get a little ranty at some points, but I'll try to extend my thoughts outward to the greater state of the lost media community too. So with that said, let's start with the first topic, and I'm going to do the reverse of what most list videos would entail, where the most wanted topic is the last one, and instead, I'm just going to come out with a heavy hitter, because it's by far the one I am still the most passionate about. The number one piece of lost media that I still want to find is Slamfest 99. For years, both Slamfest and me and my friends competed for my top spot, but I feel like Slamfest always deserved it more, because my time spent with the latter was more about the obligation, rather than genuinely enjoying the search. For those unaware about what Slamfest 99 is, the short summary is that it was a production Nintendo had to promote the release of Smash Bros. 64. It was a wrestling match with costume characters that took place at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas in 1999. The event was live streamed over the internet, and to this day, remains missing in its entirety. Yes, its entirety. This search turned 5 years old back in June. I started researching it in 2020. And since then, there have been 0 video clips or recordings from the event that have resurfaced. Our only content from it comes in the form of magazine articles, website archives, and photos that were taken at the event itself, which was a really cool find though. And like I've said before, if we had found the stream so easily, we never would have dug deeper for this stuff or gotten it. It's the kinds of content that could have easily been lost or thrown away if we hadn't found it when we did. But aside from these small victories, the main goal is getting the video recording of the event, as it was broadcast online, which has made me want to pull my hair out on several different occasions. By far, the biggest issue with this search is its age and availability. This was a live stream from 1999 that was only up for a few months before Smash Bros. Got really popular, and before screen recording was easy. It's not something that'll just be floating in a YouTube playlist, and literally none of the 3 big companies involved have been of much help being able to confirm any details for us. There's Nintendo, of course, who has never really acknowledged the existence of the event when we contacted their current reps. Golan, the PR firm who helped organize it, whose archives are allegedly so unorganized they have no idea if they have a copy or not. At least this was the case years ago when I asked. And finally, Media on Demand, who helped stream it online. Or should I say on-stream media, because Media on Demand merged with them. Or should I actually say Excite Media, because as of the last update video, it's all under the Excite Media brand now. So instead of being 1 company deep, now we're 2 companies deep, without having any clue where those older archives went, or if there were any at all that were carried over from that long ago. And when it comes to Nintendo, if you ask me, I really don't think they have a copy. Several different employees I spoke to over the years that directly had a hand in the event made no mention of a recording existing at the company, and were equally as unknowledgeable about where a copy could be as we are. With the exception of contacting smaller names, it's been very quiet. But if it hadn't been for that in itself, I really feel like Slamfest would have fallen off the map years ago and would not still be talked about today. Which to me is one of the most notable points about this search, at least from a 2025 view. Over the years, people have always speculated on what topic would be the next A Day with SpongeBob, a community-wide search. And really, I think the answer to that is Slamfest. Sure, it never got as big as A Day with SpongeBob, and it didn't garner interest from the entire internet, but gosh dang, did it bring large amounts of people together? And that's a quality of the community that I personally feel died out a long time ago. Most blatantly in the fact that the Lost Media Wiki does not do these community-wide searches anymore, also known as On the Hunt. From what I heard, their discontinuation was linked to a few different factors, which made sense, but I think there is an overarching problem that isn't an easy fix. The community has simply fractured and split off into so many smaller pieces since 2020 and 2021, which means it would be harder to corral everyone together, unlike how it used to be. Even on the forums, which I was always a huge advocate for, I rarely saw threads gain long-term attention after the first couple pages, and sometimes you'd even find users with slow topics posting in popular threads just to get attention on theirs. If you just look at the first page of topics here, they're all over the place. The range is huge and it never used to be like this, a sign that things are changing. Though a quick fix to that matter would be implementing new categories that break up the clutter because the last new section was added in 2018, but I digress. There were two other On the Hunt channels in the Discord server, Walt's Warning and Encarnacion by Chavez, that came after Slamfest, but neither gained as much attention as Slamfest in the long term, and both channels were closed because of trolls and inactivity. So in the modern day, Slamfest suffers from not only being a search that is plagued with dead ends and unanswered questions, but it also represents a point in time when big searches could sustain themselves, which feels like it hasn't been the case for years. And looking back, I really do miss that quality of the community. But as you know, Slamfest is not the only topic that I have spent time looking into and covering. And my next two wanted topics both have their own videos on my channel from quite a while ago. I'll talk about each one separately, though their search issues are very similar. The first of the two is Meso Blues. Yes, this topic is still on my most wanted list after all these years, and the ironic part about it is that we're no closer to getting it than we were 10 years ago. For those unaware about what this is, which might be a lot of people who were not around in the earlier days of the community, this is the original prototype short to Johnny Bravo, made by creator Van Partible as his senior thesis project in college, before it was pitched to Cartoon Network. And damn did I want to watch this so badly back in 2017. The clips fascinated me with how primitive they looked, and their low quality and elusiveness added to their intrigue. It felt like something secret, something that I shouldn't have been watching, something that only Cartoon Network executives would see. Now, the search story for this one is pretty cut and dry. Basically, those short clips were uploaded from a DVD like 12 years ago, and ever since then, people have been trying to source a full copy. In the earlier days of the search, this ranged from simply asking Van himself to contacting Cartoon Network and someone even having a look in the archives at Van's college. Which, by the way, the person who did that was a student who heard about the search and was already attending there. I feel like that information got retold incorrectly over the years to make it sound like someone went out of their way to check. However, in this span of time, information has come out from Van himself, who stated he is the only person with a copy and doesn't plan on releasing it, so the content can remain special. And basically that's it. There is no known way to get a copy if Van does not do a release himself. And that brings us to the second topic in nearly the exact same spot, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Phantom Blood. While I don't really have as much personal attachment to Phantom Blood as some of my colleagues do, it's still in my top 5, and I did cover the topic in its own dedicated video, like I mentioned before, so I have a stake in the search. There was a whole Discord search server dedicated to finding the movie, which I joined, where a lot of content was archived, and I became more fascinated with the whole release schedule and claims that floated around online about it. Despite getting an early trailer for the movie from a screener DVD, and around 15 minutes of footage from a student who uploaded it, the whole piece has yet to resurface, and it's remained a dormant search for the past couple years. We assume that Shueisha, JoJo's license holder, still has the film, but with it being an outdated adaptation of the series made by a company that no longer exists, an expected re-release is very slim. And no, I have not heard any more updates about the low and high quality copies from a year or two ago that were being searched for, so I'm considering those dead ends as of now. In both of these searches, the paths lead to the same result. It's a waiting game. There is very little, if anything at all, we can do to get this media. The only known copies are with their owners, and those owners have no plans to release them that we know of. So they're both searches that have sort of artificially died out. But actually, I've always had this weird thought experiment with Meso Blues, and wonder, if a fan knew about the short back before Lost Media was established and asked fan for it, would he have given it to them? I feel like a lot of value has been placed on lost or unreleased content like this ever since the term Lost Media became more used and well known. And now, given this weight of desirability, it feels like the rarity is being increased specifically because you know you can't get it. But now I have a question for you. If you had a chance to acquire a copy of either media illegally, would you, and would you leak it online? That's something else I've been noticing a lot lately, is that Lost Media feels like it's not exclusively about the thrill of the hunt or getting content through the right channels, and leaks or stolen work has seeped into the space more heavily than before. I mean, how many Nickelodeon leaks have there even been at this point? There of course was the Disney animation pilot dump, and even a variety of smaller content that's been filmed without permission from museums and then uploaded. In the past, leaks also made covering certain topics quite difficult for me, not knowing exactly where it came from or if unwanted eyes would be put on my videos simply for talking about stolen content. This has also given the Lost Media Wiki some negative attention in the past, as some have accused them of being behind the leaks, most famously from the Wicked Witch episode. Although I had heard that the only reason why Me and My Friends was even able to be leaked is that people had just recently found it uploaded on Nick's servers, with some speculation stating that they might have actually been planning an official re-release. I'm glad the search ended, but if that really was the case, I would have preferred it to just come out on its own. It really could have gone a million different ways, and getting leaked was the last of my preferences. These topics weren't really in any particular order, with the exception of Slamfest being number 1, so next up is a topic that I haven't really talked about in a long time, because there is really nothing else to say about it, though it does center around a different issue from Meso Blues and Phantom Blood. Now we're talking about Batman Fights Dracula, a topic that I sort of stumbled upon back in 2019, when I used to just browse the Lost Media Wiki articles. I really miss that. You could always find cool stuff to catch your interest, and the unauthorized, bootleggy appearance of this movie caught my eye. The movie is indeed unlicensed, and takes a more comedic approach to its plot, with Batman having to do battle with Count Dracula that a mad scientist resurrected for revenge. But this description has only been passed down through print materials and a handful of photos that we have, and not from clips or segments of the movie itself. Because this is one of those topics that is completely lost, and kinda like Slamfest, not even a single second of footage has resurfaced. But unlike Slamfest, our photos of this have come from Filipino newspapers and blogs that reported on the film years ago. Nobody that's still around from its production actually had any content. And I think that's one of the most fascinating parts about this search to me. It's not just the originality of the topic and how it kind of stands out among the other stuff I usually gravitate towards, but it's the scarceness of any of its content. Even before I made my first video about it in 2019, there had been a couple people who set out on their own dedicated search efforts years and years before that, and even at that time, there was still hardly any information about the film around. I've said before that with certain topics, they only get harder to search for as more time passes, but even in the early 2010s it was a challenge, so I wonder at what point in time there would have been more content from it available if someone had looked. Maybe the answer to that is there was no point in time, because Filipino film preservation was said to have not been great back in the 1960s when the film was shown in cinemas. And according to a citation on the Lost Media Wiki article and Wikipedia article, which was not there when I first did my research, the cinema itself where the film was shown burned down in the late 1990s after it had closed. If there was any content stored there, this could be the explanation for why it went missing, and would make sense given the track record of other vault fires resulting in more lost films. So it was never a search about its mystery, and rather just a search for the physical real. People have speculated that it might just be gone forever if there were not any backups made. Lost media that is gone forever is a popular subcategory in both the community itself but also on YouTube. I see lots of videos that discuss content which has either been lost unintentionally due to poor preservation over time, or intentionally repressed, like if it was an NSFL topic or something like that. But the problem with this category is there's only so much information that can be acquired before you hit a wall. And in this case, that wall was hit pretty early on. It's also for this lack of leads and resources for where to continue or really even start a search that has also made older films like this one of the less popular topics within the community itself. And that has led to quite a lot of disputes between self-proclaimed preservationists and the wiki. I know it kind of became a meme at some point to pick on the silent film crowd, but you do not know how tired I am of seeing people complain that the lost media community is in the wrong for spending time looking for a SpongeBob bumper instead of a silent film. Batman Fights Dracula is the perfect example of why the majority of people don't really look for older films like this. It's because, despite the interesting story surrounding its history, content, and connection to Batman, it's impossible to find and impossible to search for in an open forum space like a website or Discord server. Even in the case of The Heart of Lincoln, which was a lost silent film from around 100 years ago, much older than Batman Fights Dracula, this was found by accident at a physical location on Long Island. The Lost Media Wiki, by its very existence, is not about funding field trips, and for the most part could never find something like that, with the exception of spreading awareness, I guess. But so many Filipino groups and communities have come across my Batman Fights Dracula video, and even still, nothing notable has resurfaced from them. So I never understood why this specifically became a point of contention, and I don't see why professional archivists can't exist alongside the wiki. To be fair, it's not all preservationists who act like this, but it's by far enough of them who have villainized the wiki for it. To recap, my list is Slamfest, Meso Blues, JoJo Phantom Blood, and Batman Fights Dracula. The Jimmy Two Shoes pilot and Me and My Friends used to be on this list, but now that they've been found, I'll add a new topic to the top 5. The Oswald Ozzy Osbourne crossover commercial, because that is a topic that I never thought would still be missing all these years later. Back in 2021, Seeker of the Lost made a video that brought attention to this very obscure and forgotten ad, which fused clips together from the Nick Jr. show Oswald with voice lines from the Osbournes TV show, which even retained some of the original bleeped out swearing in some lines. Back then, we weren't even sure if this commercial was real or if it was some kind of false memory that had been reposted online. But sure enough, as more memories came forward, it pointed towards the likelihood of it existing, on top of the Oswald creator himself confirming its existence after an email exchange, and remembering that the commercial aired during a special event. But then, what sealed the deal on this, and gave us our first real lead, was a 2002 Google Groups thread from early July that outright stated someone saw the commercial on TV, and combined with the info that it was aired during a special event, we narrowed in on a few different programs or one-time airings from that period where we might be able to find the commercial. If someone recorded it, that is. It took us a couple years just to get a better idea of this time frame. And now, the problem is actually getting more content from that time period. For some reason, recordings from June and July 2002 are very hard to come by on YouTube, and we've sort of been making a call to action for people with tapes from that time to look through them. Given all the details that have been mentioned about the commercial, we believe it aired during the In Concert series on Teen Nick, during the Usher episode. But a recording of that is lost media in itself, and any other airings during that time period would only be a guess. But it is possible, and even likely, that the commercial aired more than once, so it's just been a waiting game, and one that is more dependent on the community itself and what they can produce, rather than anything else we can do ourselves, since the creator for some reason does not have this, and no one that worked on Oswald that I've contacted seemed to have this either. And even though I feel like this topic should have been found by now, and in theory is easy enough to find given all the tape collectors that are out there, it's actually the topic with the least amount of issues out of all the ones I want found. It's not lost forever, the viewers have a real chance at unearthing it themselves, and strangely, this topic in particular never really got the amount of backlash that any other lost cartoon commercial or promo did in the past. If anything, you could say that the category it comes from, lost commercials, in itself is one that a lot of people have issues with because of how disposable this kind of content can seem. And this is largely where my phrase, lost media preserves culture, comes into play, because I feel like it has to be used as a way to justify why we spend time looking for commercials or promos in the first place. It's because they're fun, easy searches that remind us of the older days watching TV, or in this case, a mashup of content that most of us never actually saw, but was still made and feels like we're getting something new. It's very, very frustrating when there is so much fracturing within the community and the amount of hate from outside of it that gets thrown in. It feels like nobody can enjoy searching for what they want anymore. It has to be for a reason, or for a greater purpose, not just for fun. And if you're having fun searching, then you're doing it wrong, because you can't enjoy this casually. It has to be your whole identity. We've come so far from those 2017 Lost Pilot days, and if you look at a lot of the topics on the forums nowadays as an example, even I have to admit it's changing rapidly. It's a lot of lost TikTok stuff or 2010 streaming stuff or YouTube videos, and while that's not really my cup of tea, I don't have a problem with it existing there, as long as there are other spaces for other kinds of content to be discussed and searched for. Whether or not I think the community is optimizing that is another story, but I hate when the community is antagonized for housing this sort of thing, or that people use me as a scapegoat for why their lost 1920s silent film that was burned 50 years ago is not getting more attention. Not to mention, lost media is huge on other platforms like TikTok, which is largely aimed at a younger demographic, the generation below me. I had nothing to do with the popularity of Charlie the Steak or other fad topics like that, which largely came from outside of my YouTube channel and the platform in general. I am not the only lost media YouTuber that exists, or the only one with large views on my videos. Nowadays, the kinds of people who are joining the community are looking more for internet mysteries and 2010s content, not 90s cartoon pilots that got me into lost media in the first place. So it's a strange feeling, and I find myself at a crossroads for that reason. The kinds of lost media that people are interested in is shifting. Meanwhile, a lot of the topics I have researched or made videos about have already been found. And by staying so heavily connected to a changing community that people have largely grown to dislike, I find myself becoming the target of complaints and anger, because the wiki itself doesn't really have a face or entity someone can complain to. A decade is a long time to have been a part of one thing, and I know most of the people who got into lost media around the time I did, in the mid-2010s, moved on. I just wish there was some semblance of respect and fun that could be injected back into the greater lost content scene. But until we can see how these changes influence the evolution of the community and the perception that it gets, I think the outcome will remain a mystery.
A true ninja always stays on top of their training, just as a true viewer stays up to date with the latest videos. So, why not grab another cup of green tea and watch some more? I'd stick around this digital dimension myself, but I gotta get back to my teammates. See you in the next chapter.